Here at 1 p.m. the counter picks ended up more like what you'd normally see, with the Allies having more. They picked the main line that they've been approaching on or attacking across on the flank here, and they took withers to start opening things up here. They're hoping to just crack this whole northern area of the, well, beyond the French entrenchments largely, to get behind them. For the French, they picked D'Artagnan and Fresler. I don't know how his name should be pronounced, or I wish I could see through my left eye. I mean, I can, but it seems to blank out. I think most of this is my brain gets scrambled when I put my contacts in, although it was definitely a lot of pain. They're not in right now, don't worry. I can give it a few days before I try them again. Anyway, the French won the initiative, and I think D'Artagnan's the more important to use, because if Tilly has a chit in the pool, which he doesn't, but if he does, he could use it to rally and improve that side of the line, which is pretty weak right now, so getting that initial start is important. The English also, I believe, threw their artillery in again. They've got to unlimber some of these guns and in some cases get out of the way. This isn't really in danger right now because this guy's not in command, but that's not a pleasant situation. D'Artagnan's attack has done quite well against Tilly's line, routing a couple of units, destroying a couple of units. These were actually both shock attacks, but no effect on anyone, even with this flank attack here. Sometimes you survive. Fresler moves forward with even more effect, punching aside, well, not in terms of losses, but punching aside the flank here, and you can see they're just kind of rolling it up. Eventually, maybe I'll be able to add this unit back to my command. The biggie here, though, is there's nothing behind Tilly for now. Maybe of some importance to get Lumley moving quicker. I don't know. It's not a pretty situation for the English, what we're seeing happening on their left. The Allied actions all came out, and well, we still got Withers coming. He's the last thing in the cup, I know. But Lodum, Schellenberg, and actually the artillery unlimbered into position where they can threaten any French advances further. Both attacked. Not a lot of effect here. You can kind of see the line's pretty much the same as it was. Sometimes it seems like nothing happens in this game, and sometimes a lot happens. You can blame that on the D10 combat system. I like that. I like that kind of luck in a game, but I could see some people feeling like, he threw in, overwhelming odds and I got repulsed. Well, that's kind of cool to me. Something that's not absolutely clear to me about the system, there's some implication that you kind of have a choice as to how dense you want your front line to be, whether you want it to be 1 unit per hex with backup units in it, and whether that's even legitimate, because the rules for when you make an assault seem to indicate that you've got to just push everything forward as heavily as you can. I'm not sure which way I stand on that, whether or not that spaced line should be allowed or not. I get the feeling the implication where it discusses, hey, this might make you want to decide whether or not to put 2 units together, which is better at shock combat, or even 3 in some cases when you have a big regiment. Or if you want to, spread them out and have a line behind the line, thereby not taking the denser fire combat table, which is clearly a huge disincentive, to tell you the truth. However, as I said, there is an implication in the rules that, when you do an assault, everybody's got to move forward a space. You might be able to arrange to have that 2 lines under those conditions under some circumstances. I'm just not sure whether or not that's supposed to be an option. Anyway, we got Withers here, and I got to be careful. He may not be able to command both his lines if I leave him where he is. I'm going to have to put him here. so he can command the cav wing over there. He's essentially got two combat wings, two lines at the same time, and he's got to keep them both under command. Anyway, he's in position to assault against those dragoons, and I think we're out of cup, so we're on to the no limbs phase. The no limbs phase, we see the Anglo-Allied army forming up over here on its right flank, and the French left, kind of mirroring it, preparing for the attack that's sure to come there. Over here, G-Dude, who's not, I don't know, Gizbron, he had a problem in terms of he withdrew some of his units, and they fell apart under the fire from withdrawing, which is kind of a funny situation. Elsewhere, Roost gathering his forces. Over here, the two Anglo-Allied cav units. This one's beginning to curve back around to take up a position here because I feel like the breakthrough is going to happen too soon for these guys to move forward after I saw how slowly they're moving. But on the other hand, they have to come up because there's a likelihood of a break over here. This whole left flank of the Anglo-Allied army is in a lot of danger. That's fine. My goals are all behind the French lines, basically, except for the losses that might accrue from it. But I've got artillery to help support my defense. And it should be costly for the French to launch this attack. On the French side, over here, Guiche actually pulled back so that he could reform and hit Orkney again. Of course, that's going to give Orkney a chance to reform himself. But, you know, that's just sort of the nature of the game. Now I got to take care of the out-of-command stuff, which is mainly routing stuff. But they're, you know, the French have huge quantities of stuff that's out of command, like this whole thing. I don't have anything I terribly want to do with it. I guess I could pivot it and start moving it to join up with that cav line very slowly. That's about the extent of what I could do. That's what I'm doing with these guys, and I'm forming up these to combine with this other line. Now that would be illegal as far as I can tell with the kind of rules that fatigue allows. Although maybe you could just say, well, that the fatigue rules don't apply to cav at all. But basically, and one of the intentions the designer implies, which is that a line is commanded by a person and you're not going to be able to change that. Well, if that's the case, then these spare lines, and this one wouldn't have been a spare, it would have been one of the main lines because it's bigger, would be useless throughout the entirety of the battle because they could never move towards their command, as it were. I'm not quite sure what you define as their command, but there you have it. And you know what? I'm going to use this guy's activity to move these there, just to fill in that gap a little bit more. I mean, there's no room for a real cav charge through those gaps, so they just become defects in the fortifications, as it were. Router's gonna route. We got a bunch of stuff still running. Some of it ran all the way into nowhere. 18 for the French, and 12, 17, 22 for the English. It's beginning to... you know, feel like, hey, we're hitting that 15%. It's going to be a feeling of flavor as we go, basically, which is to say, if the French think that they're doing well enough, they don't want to do it if they're kind of unsure, unless it really looks like the tide is turning against them. But if they think they're doing well enough, they probably will take that choice. And that's a matter of perception. The last few turns have been good for them, so they probably feel like, hey, we've probably hit it. In actuality, have they? 15. It's right about even right now. I would say they're a little ahead of the game at this point. And there's a big hand of chits, and in this case there is. We got 5. I think things work out a little bit more reasonably, which is to say you're less likely to have large sections of the front facing each other with nothing happening when they're essentially engaged, like along here. I'm not saying that nothing's been happening there. We've been seeing a little interesting dance going on. But it's possible there have been some turns where they're just sitting there without anything happening. When you have a lot of chits, it kind of behooves you, first of all, you get to make the attacks that you want all across the board, that you've already engaged. You're not in this position. So I would completely buy that Schollenberg here couldn't move forward. In fact, this might be an interesting option in the game, is to force you to play the chits that you have engaged. But here's the thing. It's not like both people actually have to pick a given chit. It's that somebody has to pick a chit in the area for it to make some sense. I don't feel like you necessarily have to withdraw or do anything, but if the other guy's not doing anything and you're not doing anything, it creates this kind of unbelievable situation. Now, in and of itself, that's not terrible. Where it really gets stupid is, when a withdrawal is happening where there's been no firing, like along these defensive lines, and the defensive line, the people across from it who haven't been able to fire get to shoot at you because you're withdrawing from a position that they weren't able to shoot you before. Maybe withdrawals shouldn't require a shot. It's a long-range shot, and it actually, it's a nice mechanism if the troops are actually fighting, but it doesn't make a lot of sense if they weren't. But with everybody making picks, I'm looking and seeing, well, the defending player kind of wants to, or the person who wants to recover or whatever, kind of wants to get a jump on things. And in particular here, the French got the initiative in Gisborne. I want to do a rally, and I put him in so that he could get his rally ahead of any possible attack that Orkney might be making. Now, Orkney's not making an attack. The English attacks are going to be centered over here, here, and the artillery. And the French attacks are largely, or the French activities are largely this whole line. Actually, wait, that's Guiche. Gisborne, this over here. I'm more worried about the attack hitting him, and I have some rallies that I want to do here. Actually, I don't know how many. I think I only have one unit I want to rally. But that's enough. I can do a swap in and stuff like that along with it. I'm not as concerned about pressing the attack because, if the Allies spend one of their few actions on rallying these forces, it means they get perhaps less of a chance of, crushing my line where they have strength. It almost feels like the offense in this game has a certain kind of advantage. It certainly does when you're moving into contact with someone. That gives you a bonus on the morale on the shock table at the very least. And there doesn't seem to be much bonus anywhere or much disadvantage anywhere unless there's that packing of the lines feel where you have too many units in a line. Is next, and he plows hard. You can see all the Danes are gone, a couple of them routed, a lot of them dead. We had one of those kind of obnoxious double routes on a melee where both sides fled. I really want to look that up, make sure I'm playing that correctly, because that's one that really bugs the crap out of me. GBOH handles that reasonably, one-side-only routes. I think it's impossible. I'm reading the way the rules are written here. If the adjusted die roll is 6 or higher, the unit suffers a disorder result in addition to any other it suffers in that attack in a post-shock. Now, you wouldn't normally suffer anything else in a shock, but I think that means that the attacker cannot rout, and he's coming in fresh shape. So the danger here is that really awful type of route, the auto route. But it doesn't say just make a morale check. It says he is just disordered. So I'm going to play it like that from now on because it really disturbs me to see two units bouncing off each other. And I don't think it's meant to represent that. Center, Lodom and Schollenberg are next. Now, Lodom does okay. He had an option to try to rally some of these units, but instead went for a counteroffensive, and it was all right. He already took his pain from the attack that Roost put on him. But Schollenberg, just a total failure. I had superiority of units. Oh, I have a chance to try a melee here. These guys aren't disordered, so they're going to melee. But, you know, just one unit routed all the way through the stack, just leaving a trail of disorder, and almost no effect on the French. I am going to hit that unit. Let's take a look at what we got here. Since I moved, I have 2 to 1, but that only gives me a +1 because the woods give a penalty to melee. A 9, that's going to rout the froggy. And he gets a morale check as well with nothing worse than a disorder possible. It doesn't happen. So now I can just push forward into there. And that's not as bad. I was pretty unhappy with the results I was getting. But, you know, as long as I'm getting some turning of that flank, I'm happy with the losses that I take. They're not inconsequential, but really I have to get the one of these units, Schellenberg preferably, into the line to help the assault that I'm going to perform on the main force thrust that I'm making over here against, you know, basically against the weaker part of things, although this defensive line is going to be a problem when I run into it, no question. Unwilling to do the kind of half move charge combination against fortifications. Württemberg launches a carousel, and you know, no matter what you do with cav, it's pretty ineffective, especially against fieldworks like this. So they run up and they're just shot to crap. The whole formation gets disordered all the way back from routing units. Very little effect. Knocked 1 French there. But the idea is, because this is just here to indicate that he had to turn, the idea is to create some sort of disorder in the line so that, you know, maybe this guy has a problem when he's facing the infantry. We start creating a gap. We've succeeded partially, but cav is just crappy when used like that. I would have really liked to have Württemberg's cav over here to face the cav that Luxembourg has, but there was no way I was going to get that deployed in time. My initial idea had been to swerve that over here and Lumley's cav over into this gap and hitting both at once. It's not happening, so I'm going to rely on Withers' little cav detachment to try to handle this huge force. Well, I mean, it's not like the infantry's not going to chase the cav off as well, but that's exactly what it'll do. We move into here, one of the cav can withdraw. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense when I have numerical superiority to withdraw like that, though. So we'll be hitting some of the cav, I guess, with the infantry, and that's always potent. All right, I think D'Artagnan went and did a little bit of reorganization to prepare for next turn and assault. He could have assaulted this turn, but he strengthened his position, and he's not, because he's keeping Tilly in line, he's not really weak in it. He's not going to expect to see Tilly get any stronger, especially with the division here. So being able to put good units in the front line was valuable, and also pushing forward here, which might end up not this turn, but heading over to Guiche to help put pressure on Orkney's command. Over here, though, Withers made his attack, and as often, mixed effects. Carousels hitting the cav, not a lot of effect with that, of course. Not all of it good either. And with the infantry coming up against the dragoons, the dismounted dragoons, that also didn't have necessarily a great effect. We punched a couple of holes. Mainly the infantry hitting the cav was valuable, as is often the case. You kind of want to run away, but I could have run away with 1 unit. That would have caused problems down the line, though. So, well, it would have been safe with the 1 unit to pull away. And I've kind of allowed a bad situation to arise there. Playing out the chits, really the French had some bad chit selection. I guess. It's hard to tell. Maybe they had just too many chits to put in the cup. He ended up doing rallies with both. D'Artagnan went, didn't he? Yeah, he went earlier. Both with Guiche and Fresler. Both of them basically did rallying actions. Fresler with the routed units back here. I don't want them running off the board. What the hell? That means I don't get a chance to command these, but I can do a swap anyhow, I think, in the out of command phase. So that's not too terrible. And then similarly, Guiche rallied a couple of units. Rather than pushing the assault, basically he's looking at, geez, I'm not in as good a shape as Orkney is here. His units are mostly rallied now. I don't want to launch an attack across the breastworks at this point. I'll wait until maybe he hits me again. Of course, for the Brits and the Allies in general, they took an artillery action as their last chit, drove away some of the, I think those are actually French that ran through Cologne units probably. At least that's the color they were in the other series. I don't know if they are in this. And also some really close-in fire right here. All canister range fire pretty much. And to some effect, but not terribly telling. And now we're on the no limbs phase, and we'll see. I don't remember who had the initiative. I think the French did this time. Really cool if there was a two-sided colored counter for the game turn so I could mark who has the initiative. It's just, you know, a simple kind of thing that if it's not two colors, I won't do it, but if it was, it would help me remember in between, because I don't sit here playing continuously. Mainly the no limbs phase and then the out of command and the rally phase, all pretty much devoted to rallying units. The Anglo-Allies learned the danger of being near the edge of the map as they lose a couple of pieces. Well, at least one English cav for that. So 8, 18, 29, looks like 40 more points for the Allies. And one can probably surmise that the French are interested in the possibility of claiming a victory if they can continue this level of losses on the Allies. On the other hand, you know, if it doesn't look like the Allies are going to be doing any better, and it kind of looks like there's more openings for the French than there are for the Allies, they've been kind of stopped here, and I don't see much opportunity unless those dragoons, which are kind of lousy, break. If I turn them into cav, well, they've got better morale, about the same firepower really. They don't get the first fire over on this column, but instead of the second fire on this column, they'll probably be firing around here-ish, because, well, they look like they're 4s, so we're looking at either this table or this table if they're stacked, but they take more hits. First of all, they have to be double stacked to get that kind of to get the heavier firepower, and that means they get a column shift against them when they're being shot against, and also being mounted gives them a column shift against them if they're being fired on by infantry, so, which is what it looks like it's there. So they're better off staying dismounted, I think. Okay, so this turn opens up with the English getting the initiative, or the Anglo-Allied, and using artillery, some of it repositioning guns into places, actually over here, turning these, but some fire. The fire was particularly or only effective right here, where this guy kind of isolated, just blew away and routed one of the French units. For the picks, we had 5 Anglo-Allied to 3 French. The 3 French picks, I believe, 2 of them are over here. I'm trying to remember where my 3rd pick was. Yeah, I think actually Guichon down, all 3 over on the far right wing, under Boufflers, which is, he was pretty amazing actually. Oh, he's the guy who defended Lille. Yeah, lost it eventually, but still. For the Anglos, we've got not Lotham. I think I picked Lotham, Schillingberg, the artillery. I think I picked Tilly to try to counteract the attack here. I feel with them outside of the breastworks, I can shove them back more easily. I did not pick Auvergne because he basically has just about enough movement points to load himself up into a position where he can charge, and he's going to want to do that. I didn't pick the guys over here because they have some rallying tasks that they really need to do, so that's what I'm more worried about there. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I took Lotham. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 for the artillery. I don't remember what the fifth shot was. Doesn't appear to be Orkney. Lumley, the cav up here, to move it quickly into place. I got to cover these guns. They're quite possibly ruined. Here's the thing though, the French didn't pick Roost because he's got some rallying, so he's going to be sitting here. May move away, but he's going to be in artillery range, unable to really do anything about it. And the thing is, you've got to sit at 2 hex distance in the canister range in order to ever make an assault. Now, you could pull back and reform and everything, but it takes you 1 turn before you get into range where you can make that assault. So you got to take 1 turn of canister if the enemy picks the artillery chit, and then another turn when you approach in the defensive fire, if I remember. I'll remember where the guns are obvious, but I know that I forgot at least in one place where the guns were hidden under a unit. Oh well, screened. I've been tossing around the idea, hey, are the French going to pick this? So they have kind of, you can get kind of a guaranteed victory by picking that if you have an idea what the points are and you feel pretty safe. And I think the French are beginning to feel pretty safe about their point picks with those piles. They've been outscoring the Anglo-Allied army every turn. What has to also be taken into account, though, is what level of victory do you want? If Villars pulls out of here, he's abandoning this good defensive position. And it's actually early in the campaigning season, I think. My history is often very poor. Oh, we should have a date here. No, it's late. It's very late. Okay, September. So nothing's going to presumably happen. You know, this is the last battle of the season. It's a big... But clearly it would be far more impressive to have, you know, a full-on victory against the Anglo-Allied army. So, if sticking around looks like a good option, I'm not going to take that withdrawal option under any reasonable level. If I feel like I'm winning the battle, I'm not sure how I feel right now. The prevention of the Anglo-Allies here is key. As long as that's holding pretty well, and I look like I'm getting the advantage over here on my right flank, you know, I'm willing to allow this to collapse because I've got a second line behind it. So I feel fairly safe about that as long as my line's not collapsing completely. If my line's collapsing completely somewhere, I'm going to get out of here. Something I'm a little disturbed about. Cavalry and artillery can't stack. Fair enough. Stacking applies at all times, though, which means the cav can't even ride through what would presumably be fairly wide channels between artillery pieces. If there's no infantry in place, you would think that the cav could kind of slip through. These hexes seem to have a lot of space compared to the firepower value, and there just aren't that many guns in these batteries. But such is life. So Lumley's going to get this kind of narrow corridor. But I did notice while I was looking that up that I cheated by doing rapid movement through the woods. Basically, you can only rapid, and I've done that in a couple of scenarios, you can only do rapid movement basically through fairly clear terrain or on roads. If you're not doing something like that, you're limited to normal movement. So I think Wardenberg got here a little early. He delayed a few turns and whatnot. I could have probably moved him forward using auto moves and such not, so I'm not too worried about it, but it is something to keep in mind, is that you can't do that rapid movement that I was doing through the woods. The Allies continue with Schellenberg's attack, plowing its way through, routing here. A couple dead units they were able to catch up with. They ran the board across there with a couple of units. Basically, they got some flank attacks in and just were able to take out that hanging flank. Right now, it's a lot smoother. It's curving back towards this line. Of course, there is this routed unit, which is a problem. It's hard to run away in the woods, actually, because you use up all your movement points in one space. At least with infantry. Cav will lose. I'll use 3 of their 4 movement points on one space, and the other movement point means that they can't enter a space without going faster than normal, so they stay where they are, not moving forward, and take an additional hit, so it's even worse for them. Of course, if you're on a road or something, you can flee down the road, all kind of weird stuff like that. Alright, the French did kind of a wasted operation with Fresleur there, where, you know, I would have been fine. I did some replacement on the line, swapping unit in, and a rally back here. My formation is not connected, so I'm going to have to wait until the out of command phase to link them up. Which of course means I shouldn't have picked the limb that I did. We see this regularly throughout the game where I make this kind of mistake. Sometimes it's well, here it's kind of an unforced error, because there would have been other things maybe I could have done. Say, use Luxembourg to try to chase away this cav, the Withers command, actually. Whatever's sticking out of the woods there. That would have been a valid use, whereas this really wasn't. Sometimes it's not really an error at all. You just have too many chits and you don't have anywhere to pick, and you gotta throw people into the cup. And then D'Artagnan launched an attack, and he's taking command everything outside the entrenchments here. Guiche is probably going to punch again, but it just made more sense to make attacks here and here at the same time. This guy has been part of Guiche's command, but it didn't. And the biggie here is that I overran the guns. And we also saw some Dutch cav run away out of the woods from these guys. In the woods, he would have had some advantage, but there's the penalty of cav and overstacking. It just didn't seem worthwhile when I really want to position up and hit this kind of all at once. So rather than... the problem is I can't come charging even with a carousel through the woods. So there's a very limited front that I can hit on there. Anyway, not a lot of chits left in the cup. All right, Lotham took a swing and not any good effect. He chased away over here, and otherwise not much at all. Tilly, however, had a bloody little fight, and you can see he's got a bunch of routed units. I don't know how many of them are new, but he also Did some significant damage to the French. You see a couple of those routes I think are new. There were some additional destructions, at least one, probably two. Of course, Tilly's command is becoming a disorganized mob. My only hope is that I can get this cav in the way to buy myself some time while Tilly reforms. Like Guish's chit came up. Now you may have noticed that he was face down before. I had a die roll mishap. There was a horse lion here on the wrong direction. Basically, had not yet been activated. So anyway, charge forward across it, stretching out to this unit. Across the embankment and fortifications in large part. And some effects here. We got some routing units that went breaking through the cav and other problems. But we also cleared this gun. And this was really in danger here. There were two units here and here firing at it in the full fire phase. Knocked all the units that were on top off. You can see we got some casualties too. But the artillery managed to save itself with a final canister fire at the last unit. Basically, the two units that were here firing were both routed away, and you can see them over here. The rest of the game without much significance, the normal rallying and failures to do so. Point-wise, 11-22 for the French, 10-17, 28-32 for the English. And the French are feeling pretty secure about their point lead at this point. They just are continually doing better. But again, why not go for the bigger victory? All right. The chit picks. That's not there. Big differential. 5 for the Allies, 3 for the French. 2 for the French. The French didn't have a lot of picks, obviously. They won the initiative and put Frizzler on an attack, and it was fairly successful against Tilly. I don't remember what their second chit is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's D'Artagnan. I think that's what I did. For the Allies, I was really pushing in terms of, lots of stuff I don't want to pick that I threw in, like a Lodom here. He's not in a position that I particularly want to launch an attack from. He doesn't have any rallies. Yeah, I could do that I terribly need to do. But additional pressure here can't hurt. Schellenberg obviously went. I actually went with Württemberg and Withers here to try to put additional stress on this. And the artillery. And then for the final one, I think I went with Orkney. If he clears out of the way, then the cav can cover that retreat or something, I guess. Although it's going to be tough with that artillery there. He can't walk through it with the cav. So kind of not a great position either way. The artillery's in the cup, though. So that's actually kind of my biggest hope, is being able to drive some of the pro-French stuff out of there using the artillery, and then maybe I don't have to actually commit the cav, because cav is just not that impressive here, especially now that the Dutch cav here no longer has the full tilt charge ability. That can be impressive. Sometimes we've seen the move charge work well against infantry, but overall the infantry firepower is just too potent for the cav to be a... D'Artagnan follows up, largely pushing aside some sort of remainders of Tilly's infantry that were scattered around here. They're gone now. A couple of them over here. Some in this route pile. Well, D'Artagnan, we already talked about here. The next one was Lodom, and I've started partway through the fire phase. Actually, all the way through. And I realize I've been kind of screwing something up. No big shock, right? When I've got a line going up against an enemy line, I've always kind of assumed, hey, everybody in that enemy line can fire. When I look at the reaction fire table, or rules, what they say is you can only reaction fire if you are fired at. Which means if you have sort of a numerical superiority, say here, well, if the Allies only fire on this French unit, only this French unit can fire back. And what I've been doing is kind of, okay, well, I'll fire at each one, knowing that they're going to fire back, rather than try to, you know, get some kind of local superiority on the firepower. In a sense, it makes sense with these kind of, the hexes are bigger than the firing range, so you could kind of, you know, march these guys so that they're not really in range of this guy and be firing whatever, although you start making that kind of thinking and the withdrawal fire starts making less and less sense, right? But then I came to this situation and realized, you know, I'm not happy with this. If this French unit were here, I would have allowed it to fire. But I had to look it up because I was just disturbed by this. But you know what? I'm going to allow it to fire anyhow. I'm going to just say, if you've got something firing in front of you, you've got the right to engage it. Because otherwise, it just doesn't allow, I don't know, it feels off to me. And I feel like I've been playing it all that way all along anyhow. So we're going to see some flank fire on these Prussians that, well, sucks to be them. Running through the limbs at the end here, there were quite a few. Like I said, the English had a lot of them. Schulenburg probably did the best. No attack, just marching forward, connecting up some of these units that had gotten ahead of the rest of the line. So now he's in a position to not only punch through here, but now assault this other line. Now, of course, this is still fortified lines. I was hoping that Withers, who is dithering, shifting some troops around, positioning himself for that assault that just hasn't come, that he'd be able to plow ahead and maybe cause you know, some good effect there. Württemberg also did some sort of rallying actions. I'm just going to hit all at once, basically. Although Schulenburg is not going to be able to touch at the same time, probably set up for an attack this round. Elsewhere, the British artillery chased away the unit that was most threatening them, but Lodum's in trouble, as you can see. Orkney did an assault to little or no effect, although, well, we got a couple of kills, and I think they came from that. I kind of screwed something up. I don't want to talk too much about it. But anyway, that's where we're at. We're going to the no limbs. People like Tilly have some rallying to do. He's got almost nothing left there. Huge amounts just running for the hills. For the no limbs phase, Auvergne here failed to get any kind of assault going. He made a roll, didn't get there. I haven't gotten to Tilly yet. He's got some stuff to do. And it just rallying. But over here, Valliere managed to do an assault. Now this is kind of questionable whether he wanted to do the assault or not. He could have just stood there and ignored the fighting. It probably would have been as good. As it is, he's kind of increased the amount of times that the dragoons take fire. And that's probably not wise, but I feel goofy sitting there with nothing, doing nothing when I'm right on the edge, and I don't have any rallying or formation changes I particularly wanted to do. One thing though, actually I moved this somewhere it couldn't go. It had to go in here. I'll ignore the fact that made a denser unit. Oh, no, it can't go in there. They're not the same language. Had to go here then. Such a weird rigidity when you're dealing with those. Alright, we'll take care of Tilly. He's just going to be rallying stuff. Well, here we are at the 3 p.m. We just finished 2:30. Let's see what our points add up to, because it doesn't look as good for the French this turn. 19 for the Anglos, 11, 21, 27 for the French. Now, of course, I don't know the points right now. I shouldn't. I gotta think a little bit. I'll be back in a moment after I read the rules again on how this is stated, because to me, if the French take the withdrawal, it definitely seems like a much, much lesser victory than could possibly be achieved. But with these cav coming into place, with this breakthrough here, I just don't know that I feel like I'm going to be giving more than I can take. So I may be calling this at this point. Actually, this is, I think, the most fun I've had with the battle, although I liked rallies as well. Oudenarde turned out to be kind of a mess, largely because I used the fatigue rules, which I think are a mistake. So it's with a very heavy heart that I feel like I have to declare the French withdrawal. Now, what's funny here is the French just declare a victory, withdrawing their army, and end the game. But they don't have to actually physically withdraw it. I don't care how you do that. They're going to take some losses from that. There's no question in the matter. I'm not going to handle the withdrawal. We've seen how I handled the rout. This would be something different. This would be a completely controlled withdrawal. But the Allies don't hold any of the objective hexes. I feel like the French army is wearing down. Too many units have little white markers under them. That means every single one of them that does is one step away from dying. I've got a couple of routed units. I just don't know that I can maintain the kind of losses I'm inflicting on the Allies compared to what I'm taking. We're beginning to see, this line's rolling up. What do? I lose my leverage here. I probably have been ground to a halt along this side just by the placement of those cav. They're gonna, they're gonna hit me and disrupt my attack. Now, of course, cav is more valuable than infantry, so the losses, and maybe not as effective, so the losses they take are going to be painful. Now, my only bright spot is down here. Tilly is just like hosed, but I'm just seeing too many negatives. So if we take a look at this, 15% of 143, I'm pretty sure I have it there. Well, 10% is 14.3. Means another 7.2. Crap! I don't think I did it. Wait. No. 10% is 14.3. 20% would be 28, 29. I can add that to the French total and I'm still well under the English. I'm fine. Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking there. Somehow comparing that 28 to 10% of this or something. I don't know. Anyway, clearly the French have inflicted a good deal of casualties on this. And yes, I really kind of enjoyed this one more. Although I am kind of saddened by my stained chart from my tobacco. Oh well. This one's clean. There's no real way to clean that. I tried brushing it, and obviously I can't use dampness on it. All right, I guess I'll be back with a review fairly shortly.